So earlier this week, President Cyril Ramaphosa outlined South Africa's plan to import electricity from neighbouring countries in order to supplement our constrained supply. Eskom has confirmed that it's now in talks with Botswana's Power Corporation about the possibility of getting power from there. We can now speak about this. We're joined by Marketing and Communications Manager at Botswana Power Corporation, Dineo Seleke. Dineo, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for being on Newzroom Afrika. Can you give us an idea, as much as you can, I suppose, of where discussions are between yourselves and Eskom?
Good afternoon to yourself, and good afternoon to South Africa and the rest of Africa who's watching. I would like to say, as Botswana Power Corporation, just to make clarity on this, we started an engagement with Eskom South Africa in the previous quarter. That's about in the 3 months that we just came out of the winter season. That's from April to June. And our discussions were basically about us as Botswana Power Corporation selling electricity to Eskom during off-peak periods. And these are times where our demand has dropped lower than our generation capacity, which means that what we were negotiating, or what we are still in discussion with Eskom, is whether South Africa can purchase electricity from us that is surplus or excess during off-peak times. So that is where we are still at in terms of our discussions. So when we talk about our off-peak times, it's basically usually on weekends or on hours that we do not consume excess electricity. If we have met our local demand, let's say for the day, and we generate about 580, let's say, megawatts, just for the sake of this conversation, and then we are consuming only 300 out of that. So it means that the 280 excess that we won't be using as a country is what we are discussing whether we can give to Eskom. But this can vary and fluctuate depending on how much we consume in a day or on that day. So it would mean that it's not a fixed figure. It depends on how much we have as excess that we can start discussing and negotiating with Eskom on whether they can purchase that excess or so that surplus.
You say these conversations have been going on for quite a while. Why has an agreement not been finalized yet?
It's not a while, that I would say it's quite a while, because we started these engagements just under 3 months. Only in 3 months ago that we managed to sell to the Southern African Power Pool, that we started also engaging Eskom, because we needed to have a fixed or maybe an organized, systematic way of selling our surplus electricity, because we were aware that there is a need for us to share with other countries that need our surplus. So while we were selling at Southern African Power Pool, we noted that some countries at the off-peak times are not necessarily ready to procure power from the pool. So that means that excess electricity from Botswana would be idle. And therefore, if others are not buying, then how can we make sure that we've got secured market for our access? So that is what we are going through. The reason why we haven't arrived at conclusions is because it was ongoing discussions, and they depend on how far we go as two partners. So I believe that is a process that we should continue and conclude as both utilities in the region.
And would you sell to South Africa at the same price that you're selling domestically?
It's different, because exporting brings in quite a couple of processes in it. It's quite different in terms of negotiations and deal. And it also is determined by the times at which you are exporting as a country. If we are going to be exporting during the day, it's not going to, at off-peak times, it's not going to be the same as if we are lucky to export at peak times. So in terms of pricing, those are discussions that are yet to have to come to play between the two utilities. so that we know how we are going to be costing and pricing our surplus electricity that we'll be dispatching to Eskom at the time we agree that we are going into the deal. So I believe that as developments go on, we shall engage media houses from both countries to make sure or send out statements that will communicate exactly what we have settled for. And I would like to say that this is not going to have to be something that we want to bind to a certain amount of electricity. We will have to be as flexible as knowing that it's as and when we have got access or surplus electricity off-peak times that we need to sell out of our country to other countries. But if it's an Eskom deal, then it should be to Eskom.
So as you say that this is not something that will be bound to a specific amount, shall we say, at this point of power available, would you be able to provide consistently, say, for a month or on a weekly basis? How would that be worked out in terms of what you have to sell and how often?
Okay, what we have to sell and how often would be determined by if, as a country, we have not met our local demand. That is, if we have made sure that the country, as Botswana, has got enough, and the moment we have access, that is what we will have to sell. And depending on how much that excess is what we will be selling to Eskom once we conclude on our deal.
Okay, I know I'm pushing it here a little, but do you have a ballpark figure?
Okay, I wouldn't have a round figure because, like I said, the figure is determined by how much we consume as a country against how much we have generated in excess. So let me give an example. In an instance where we are able to generate full capacity, let's say at 600 megawatts, and we are on off-peak period consuming as a country 300 megawatts of that 600, it means that we have 300 megawatts that can go into the grid or into the Southern African power pool, or we can even share with Eskom should we get into this final deal. So that is just by way of giving example. It's about how much we've generated in terms of our generation capacity against how much the country's demand is. Once we meet that demand, the difference or the surplus or the excess is what we will be able to now send out of our country. So it cannot be fixed, like I said earlier.
Yes.
It will depend on how much we have as surplus after we have utilized or taken what we need as a country.
I was asking
so
more about a selling price ballpark figure. I know that you said negotiations are going to continue, so I'll move on from that and ask you about just technically, how easy would it be to do if this agreement is finalized to get power from Botswana flowing into South Africa? Is it as easy as flipping a switch?
I wish I could say it's as easy as flipping a switch, but then, as you know, South Africa, Botswana, even other countries in the SADC region are linked together through the Southern African Power Pool. So us as members of the SAP, it means that we already have existing infrastructure, existing technologies that are transactional across the region between the countries. So we wouldn't be transacting for the first time with Eskom. We wouldn't be transacting for the first time with any other country because we have got networks that are interlinked as sub-countries, which means that it's a matter of us agreeing that this is how we're going to do it and this is how we're going to channel it. If you are maybe to observe or maybe learn a bit more about our network connectivity, we have got bulk supply substations that are carrying high voltage electricity across the SADC region, across the sub-member countries, including even South Africa. And these are interlinked by transmission power lines that are carrying this high voltage, where we can even have a link with Botswana and Zimbabwe. We have a link with Botswana and South Africa. So the existing transmission links are the ones that can be viable for this transaction to occur.
I think we should actually have a team come out there to have a look at how all of this works. I wanted to ask you about Botswana as we conclude then, the goal of being the electricity benchmark in the region by 2026. That's what, 4 years away now. How close are you to target and how will you do it?
I want to believe that we are very close to target. I would like to say 2026, like you're saying, that speaks to our Maduo 26 strategy, which we have launched very recently. And we are also already feeling the outcome or the performance of the strategy already. As it is, if we are engaging with you already as South Africa and as Eskom, it means that we are close to being a regional benchmark, because this is where we are now having countries wanting to get into engagement with ourselves, to get into transactional deals with ourselves. And that is just how we are starting the journey and looking forward to going beyond. So in terms of the strategies that we have in place, our intention is to grow the generation capacity of the country. And we have actually achieved in terms of improving the performance of our power plants, especially that we concluded the refurbishment of Morukule A power station. And now we are on remedial works for Morukule B power station, which Unit 4 has been completed and has deposited and is executing 150 megawatts already in addition. So as soon as this refurbishment, remediation project is conclusive, we are very sure that we are sustainable and stable, and which is what we already are feeling, because this resulted in us being able to start exporting power in the Southern African power pool. So we are already there, and we have made our mark in the Southern African power pool through all those projects that are making us look forward into achieving our Maduo 26 strategy. And amongst the other projects that we're looking into, or that have already started to increase our local generation capacity, is solar photovoltaic projects that should contribute about 200 megawatts more by the end of 2024. So we will be having that project running for the next 2 to 3 years, with some projects adding or being synchronized to the grid as and when we complete them.
Dineo, Seleke, thank you so much for speaking to us on the program today.